everybody. We are going to be finishing up the crimson color for House Lannister of Casterly Rock. Hope you enjoyed the no talking segment, and yeah, let's finish this banner up. I hope you are all staying safe. This is actually the first full day of the lockdown in Minnesota due to the COVID-19 pandemic. And I actually got this camcorder and microphone about 3 weeks ago. Actually, yeah, it was 3 weeks ago to the day. I feel very fortunate that I got it when I did, because this has actually been a pretty good distraction for me. I haven't been too worried about it, at least not more so than I feel like it would help. I am worried for the people who are more vulnerable to it. Both my parents are in their 70s, so I am concerned that they're staying safe and that they're, practicing good hygiene and good habits. Heard one person I heard that she was having panic attacks almost on a daily basis with regards to it. But that's something I for myself, I had to learn to manage my own mental health when it came to the news, especially when it came to news that I couldn't control, news that would upset me. Well, I think it is good to stay informed. I think it's also important to know that a lot of what happens in the world, especially if it's far away, especially if it doesn't really have the most direct effect on you, unless you're willing to do something about it or engage in what you're learning about. It's important to maintain your distance from it, especially when you're hearing about news stories about something that happened, in other countries, or especially now, it can be sad to think about all the stuff that's happening, and it can be a little overwhelming. But having that disconnect, having to separate yourself, it's something that I was thinking about this. I've been thinking about this for a while. We're so connected to every part of the world now with the news. We can hear, and anytime there's something tragic happens, or anytime there's a huge news story on the other side of the world, we hear about it. But for most of human history, horrible things, happened all the time, and horrible things happened in all parts of the world. But as humans, we weren't aware of it. we weren't adapt to. It's only been recently that we've been so plugged into the world and so connected to what's happening that I think our brains haven't evolved to absorb all of it. So disconnecting from the news and kind of, taking your emotions out of the news story. It's not a lack of empathy, but it's more safeguarding your health. Because when terrible things happen, there are people out there who do feel for them. And those people will be holding that weight on their shoulders and that weight in their feelings. And unless it's someone you know personally, it's not someone you're close to or someone who's a part of your life, you feel for them. And each and every one of them, every time you hear about it, your body is just not used to it. So I hope I hope you're safe, and I hope you're keeping yourself busy. And unless you're currently dealing with the illness yourself, or immediately, or someone close to you is dealing with it, I hope you're keeping yourself distracted, because sometimes that can be important too. Just being taking your mind off something. And especially in times like these, it can be important, very important, where we can find it to practice gratitude. I myself am very fortunate that my job is considered essential. And this past 2 weeks, I've actually been working from home. Got my computer, I was able to get everything set up before the office closed. And I've been able to wake up just 10 minutes before I have to punch in. So I get up, 10 minutes later I'm already punched in and already starting my day. And it's a little weird starting work. Having been asleep just 15 minutes before that, and still shaking some of the grogginess out of my eyes. But it's an adjustment. I'm actually enjoying working at home. It can be a little distracting, but they're distractions that I am in control of. Distractions that I can take care of. I don't know what's going to happen a month from now or 2 months from now. I don't think anyone really does either. So I think it's important to take things on a day-by-day basis and not try to panic too far into the future. When I posted the picture of myself with every banner right after I finished the last one, somebody in the comments actually asked me how I did that. And I simply responded, one banner at a time. And much like in the big book for, if you're familiar with Alcoholics Anonymous or Narcotics Anonymous or any of those groups, and talk about one day at a time. And that kind of ties into a lot of philosophical teachings and like Buddhist teachings, where they talk about being present, being here now, and that's just kind of like paying attention to what you're doing now and just really being in the moment. Because if you're thinking too much about the past and worrying too much about the future, you're not really taking care of what's here and now. And that is one thing I learned about doing. That's one thing that really kind of grounded me when I did these banners. I actually started doing them when I was going through a pretty bad depressive episode. And I had started doing them a few weeks before, but what happened was I couldn't get into it. It was something where, as much as I enjoyed it, but at the same time, when I was starting to draw, I'd get bored, and I'd be drawing, like if I was coloring, the Lannister crimson background, I think to myself, I want to do something else. I want to go do something more fun, more enticing. I want to go play video games, or I want to go look at some, go on the internet or go on YouTube. And that was something I had to overcome very early on, that sense of wanting to go do something else. Eventually I just tried to learn to suppress it. I was like, well, you've made the decision to do this. You made the decision to color this banner. And I basically just like, well, if you made this decision, so you're going to resign yourself to sticking with it and finishing it. And so that helped me get through quite a few of them. And then when I began my depressive episode, it was something that I was able to take my mind off of the kind of the current situation I was in. And I would say that I maybe got a little too carried away and was almost removing myself completely from my situation. But especially when I started, it definitely helped me. It definitely helped me in a therapeutic way, kind of be mindful more of what I was doing. And one thing I really learned, and I try to impart this to everyone who looks at my stuff and uses the word talented. Every time I hear that, I really just kind of I usually try to correct them. And Bob Ross actually said something about talent in one of his, when he was doing one of his paintings, and it really stuck with me. He said, talent is nothing but a pursued interest. And that made me really happy to hear that, because it was basically he basically said something exactly, a feeling that I had been feeling for a long time, but I just didn't know how to describe it. And that's exactly what talent is. Like I said about Dimebag Darrell and Eddie Van Halen, they would basically the guitar became an extension of their body. And they would just sit with their guitar for hours and hours and just practice and practice and practice. And the reason they were able to get good, the reason they were able to make a name for themselves, in the music community at large, and first the small music community they were part of, and then eventually grow into the wider world and became beloved and respected musicians, is simply because they had that interest in guitar. And I think everyone has an interest in something. And big part of what life is just discovering what that interest is. I didn't draw for a long time. Like, I didn't draw for most of my 20s. Occasionally I would, but it's just never stuck with it. And when I finally came around to it, when I finally was going through a rough time and was trying to stop playing Skyrim and video games in general, because I do have some addictive tendencies, and even this is drawing and coloring is almost an addictive habit, I feel like, but it's a positive one because I enjoy it. I never regret the time that I spend doing it. And the only time it never really becomes a problem where it starts to affect my life in a negative way. There were times where I would spend like 14 hours. I think the most I ever did was when I was finishing it up after I moved back to Minnesota, and this was probably 5 months after I took the Shield Hall picture. I was redoing a bunch of banners. I spent 10 days working 14 hours a day. And by the time I got done, I would say, like, my wrist and hand was starting to hurt. I was having some issues with my back from the way I was sitting. And I also took like 10 days off of work. I was just doing Uber at the time. So that was, I guess, the only time where it was possibly a detrimental for how much time I was putting into it. But it was a conscious decision I made that I wanted to just finish it up. I try to tell people that, you know, when they compliment me on my artwork or banners or anything related to drawing, especially when I hear them say, like, I wish I could do that, or I could never do that. I try to tell them, like, it's not, like, the only reason I could do this is because I just, I sat down and started to do it and just kept doing it, and then I put, at this point, thousands of hours into coloring. I've held, like, these Prismacolor pencils, I've, held one in my hand at this point for seriously thousands and thousands of hours. And I still have almost all the ones that I did. There's a few that I either gave away or discarded for one reason or another, but for the most part, almost like the first 3 I ever did, I saved them. And I'm very glad I saved them, because I was able to see how I progressed. I was able to see where I came from and where I am now. And that's something I'm still very grateful for, because it really taught me, and it taught me that I didn't start off doing very well. I didn't start off making these banners that were crisp and bright and vibrant. Some of them looked like they were drawn by a very talented 6th grader. They had the coloring was a little shoddy. The pens I was using was Sharpie pens, and so they were not as smooth and not as crisp. But as I kept doing it, I read more about art supplies and more about processes, especially when I became interested in doing comics, because I like writing jokes and humor. I realized comics were kind of the best way for me to explore that, because I knew at some point I'm like, what am I going to draw once the banners are done, because eventually I'll run out of those. So I've gotten to the I really realized, like, you know what, I'm pretty good at this, and I can feel confident saying, you know, I can draw, and I know I can color pretty well and make things look really good. But now the hard part for me is putting myself out there and showing my work. And one really good book with regards to sharing your work is by this artist called Austin Kleon, named Austin Kleon. And he actually has a book called Show Your Work. And his whole thing was years ago, and this book was a huge inspiration on these videos, so that's why I'm kind of why I'm sharing it. He talked about how years ago an artistic process was a secret. And they were trade secrets, and artists and writers and so forth would closely guard it and keep it close to their chest and not let anybody in. But now with the internet, because there's so many artists out there, and it's just became a thing where people are more interested in how stuff gets made. They want to see, they want to tour the sausage factory. Whereas before it would be something you were only supposed to the audience was really only supposed to be privy to the final work. But I'm glad there's actually this openness for people to actually see how things get made. And I've for years been trying to figure out how to build an audience, how to show people my stuff. And over the last year or so, I was watching a lot of ASMR videos at work. I think I mentioned a couple of them. I've been watching Bob Ross, which is not technically ASMR, but it's unintentional ASMR. The other ones I watch JB ASMR. It's GIBI. I think she's got like 2.5 million followers, so she's kind of a ASMR bigwig. I've also been watching Jason Dornstar, who actually followed me on not Twitter, on Instagram, and I was actually super thrilled about that, because he's kind of I think he's really inspired by Bob Ross too. He's very positive, very chill dude who shines shoes in Denver, and my godparents live out in Denver, and next time I visit them, I'm actually definitely next time I go out there, I'm gonna see if I can get my shoe shined, or see if he's doing that. We'll see how it goes. And the other one I got into recently, he's got a lot of followers, was Haircut Harry. I like watching I always liked watching haircutting, even when I was a little kid, and I was going to get my haircut at I used to go to Cost Cutters at the mall, and I always used to get my hair buzz. I always get just a buzz cut, and but I remember even at an early age, I'd watch people get hair. I'd sit in the chair waiting for the next stylist to become available, and I didn't realize what it was, but I knew I just loved watching people get their hair cut. And then when they'd say all right, it's your turn, I'd get bummed out that I couldn't watch it anymore. So Haircut Harry, this video is a channel I like watching. It's because he goes to some really interesting places. My favorite one from this past week is watching him get a knife massage, which I'd never heard of before. But I highly recommend watching that video. It looks super relaxing, and I kind of want to get one of those myself. So I'll have to look into that. I don't know if I said the shoe shine guy is Jason Dornstar. I think it's Dornstar Shines, or maybe just Jason Dornstar. You could YouTube him. I think there's a few other, I can't really think of names of right now. There's so many. There's a lot of ASMR people out there, but each one has their own, their own thing. I think a lot of it is ASMR. I think it's kind of like stand-up comedy. There's a lot of people doing it, but no one does it. If you do it, no one does it quite. Will do it quite like you. And if you stick with it long enough, eventually you'll get good, and people will start to notice. And all the people who were doing it before you, who weren't into it as much, are gonna, go do something else. And so that's kind of where I'm at right now. I kind of realize I'm not jumping on the ASMR boat at the earliest time, but I'm mostly doing this because I needed something to put my energies into. And I wanted to keep making artwork, and I really wanted some people to